On the phone, Grammy Award-winning guitarist, singer, songwriter, producer. Pretty much if it involves music, you have been involved somehow. Tommy Allsup, how you doing today?
Good, Bob. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Hey, you started in 1949. You've been in music since 1949. Let me ask you, what got you interested in, you're a guitarist.
Yeah.
But was that your first instrument?
Yeah, it was.
And how did you get interested in guitar?
Got me out of farm work, you know.
Yeah.
I played for a couple of dances with my father. He was a fiddle player, and back then they'd have what they call ranch dances, and people put all the furniture outside and dance in all the rooms in the house. You just sit in there and play, you know. There'd be square dancing going on.
Right.
And waltzing, and that seemed to pay pretty good money, you know. You could work all day in the fields back then, you know, for $1, $2 a day, you know, and you could go play a dance and make $10, $15, $20, you know. So that kind of got my attention.
And that started you playing in groups.
Right.
So you traveled around a lot. You played with a lot of groups, actually, throughout the 50s.
Yeah, I did. I started up in Oklahoma with a little Western band and left there with a guy named Art Davis. Was on the road with him for a while, and then went with Johnny Lee Wills, and that's when I got into with the Wills family, and everything I always seemed to get back down around Lawton, Oklahoma. I had a band in a club there and I could leave out whenever I wanted to, you know, and I ran that band, and that's when a few years went by playing around there, and then I got a call to go to Clovis, New Mexico, and do some session work out at Norman Petty's, and while I was there, Buddy Holly had just came back from England, and he heard some stuff I was doing, asked if I'd like to play on some of his records, so that kind of got me started. We did a song called It's So Easy, and I had a guitar solo on it, and then that was his next single back in June of '58, so he said, that's going to be my new record, and can you travel with me and play that solo you played on? I said, yeah, you know, so that's when I started traveling with him.
So how many songs did you play on Buddy Holly's song?
Probably 8 or 10, you know. The biggest ones were It's So Easy and Heartbeat and Wishing and Love's Made a Fool of You.
Good stuff. Did you do a lot of session work for anybody else at that time, or were you it just became session work for him?
I was recording with just about everybody that came into Clovis, New Mexico at that time. And when after Buddy got killed, I went to California and started doing session work out there with Snuff Garrett at Liberty Records, and then finally got the job as head of Country and Western Division of Liberty. And I had Willie Nelson and Bob Wills, and had a pretty good country roster, and that really got me involved in the recording end of it. And from there, I went back to Nashville in the late 60s, you know, stayed there about 30 years.
Right. Buddy asked you, like you said, to be part of the Winter Dance Party tour.
Well, it started out in the summer. We had a summer dance party.
So you played live with him, you started playing live with him prior to the Winter Dance Party.
Yeah,
and
we did a summer dance tour. Then he got married in August, and then we had a big show of stars in the fall of 88 or 58. And right after that tour, the two original Crickets decided to stay in Clovis. Buddy wanted to move to New York City, and they didn't want to go to New York City, so he moved up there, and they stayed out there with Norman Petty and was going to work as the Crickets. But then this Winter Dance Party tour rolled around, and Buddy came by while I was playing in Odessa just before New Year's going into 59. So he had a big tour coming up in the Midwest, a Winter Dance Party tour, and he had hired first he said J.I. and Joe B. wasn't going to tour no more. And he had hired Waylon to play bass, and would I find a drummer, and that'd be the new Crickets, you know. So that's how that last tour came about, with Waylon playing bass, Waylon Jennings.
Did you like playing live shows?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
What type of guy was Buddy Holly?
Oh, he was just a normal, good Texas guy, you know. He didn't have a drinking problem. He certainly wasn't into drugs, and he's like any cowboy you meet in Texas.
The Winter Dance Party, of course, very unorganized, the way it was set up. You know, you were shooting from state to state and show to show every different night. And what do you remember about the conditions of that tour?
Oh, man, I remember it like it happened last week, because it was freezing cold. It was below zero every day was out, and we had buses coming out of Chicago, was riding in those buses. They'd send out a bus, and it'd break down in a couple of days, and the heaters wouldn't work on them. We'd had like 5 buses when those guys got killed. Different buses sent out from Chicago, and the heaters wouldn't work on them. They wore out. I think they were the Greyhound or Trailways, that type of bus, you know. Mm-hmm. And they needed to be junked. That was probably the last two of those things to make, because we left 4 of them out on the road, you know.
What was the atmosphere like on the bus between the guys?
Oh, it was cool. Everybody was having fun, you know, singing and talking. And till that night, a couple of nights before they got killed, we broke down in Iron Horse, Wisconsin, way up there. We'd left Duluth, Minnesota, and we froze. I mean, literally froze going down the road. So we pulled over, and the guys from New York was trying to burn papers in the aisles to stay warm.
Wow.
We stopped doing that, and then that's the night our drummer got frostbite in his feet.
Right.
There was a car came along. It was a deputy sheriff. So he took Carl and a couple of guys into town, and then he sent the sheriff's posse back out there to pick the rest of us up. And we spent the night there, hovered around a stove and a little hotel there in that town. And then we caught a train the next day down to Green Bay, Wisconsin. And we had to leave Carl up there in the hospital with his feet frozen. And so we played in Green Bay. We're going to England in March to celebrate his 50th anniversary playing in England.
Wow.
At Albert Hall.
That ought to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it will be. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Now, you mentioned that the drummer did get the frostbite. From what I hear, it ended up that Ritchie Valens and Buddy Holly ended up playing drums on each other's
they did.
set.
In Clear Lake, they sure did. And there's a guy who was there that night and took pictures. And we've heard about these pictures, and they didn't surface till last year. He came out there and showed them to me. And he's actually got a picture that shows Buddy playing drums with Ritchie, and he's got a picture with Ritchie playing drums with Buddy, So
now you remember of course, you remember the atmosphere at the Surf Ballroom in Iowa that night. What was it? What was it like? I know the crowd, the pretty packed place, and
it was packed, and it didn't seem like they thought anything about it in that day and time for Ritchie coming out and playing drums with Buddy, because we were backing him in Waylon, and Carl was backing other acts anyhow, And then Buddy came out and played for Ritchie, and we was anxious to get on that plane and get out of there, because we'd been freezing every night. We was going to actually get to the next job early and have time to get some laundry done, and I was kind of looking forward to it. I don't know why. He asked me several times that night if he'd fly in my place, and I kept telling him no. So I went back in to check on everything, see if everything's loaded on the bus, and he was still in there signing autographs. That's when I flipped the coin and told him to call it.
Yeah, how did the plane end up being chartered that night?
Buddy chartered. As soon as we got there that night, he went in and talked to a guy's name was Anderson that ran the ballroom and asked him if there was a flying service there, and he said, yeah, Dwyer flying service, and he called Dwyer, and they said, he said, I only have one pilot. Let me get a hold of him. He lived in another town. He got a hold of him, and he got back with Buddy and said, we're set to go. We'll leave out whenever y'all finish up tonight. Our tickets were $36 a piece.
Wow.
To fly from Mason City, Iowa to Fargo, North Dakota.
Which was actually rather expensive for that time.
Yeah, $36. Yeah, that's about what you'd make a night playing.
Yeah. Now the plane was chartered, and it was originally you, Buddy, and Waylon scheduled to be on the plane. And like you say, you flipped the coin with Ritchie, and Waylon gave up a seat because of the Big Bopper. Yeah, the Bopper asked him early in the evening. He said, "Man, if there's any seats left on that plane, I'm sure I could go." He had actually got the flu that very day, and he's getting sicker and sicker. He said, I need to get up there and get me a shot and get rested up a little bit. So Waylon said, man, you can fly in my place because I'm not really that crazy about flying. So he did. He gave up his seat to the Bopper, and then, of course, Ritchie kept bugging me all night to fly. And I finally gave in at the last minute, flipped the coin, and told him to call it. And it hit the floor. He called heads, and so I go back outside, and Buddy was sitting in the station wagon right behind the ballroom, and I told him Ritchie was going to be going to my place. We flipped, and he won the coin toss. So that's how that all came about. What type of guys were Ritchie Valens? Because they weren't around a long time. Ritchie Valens and Buddy, Big Bopper rather, they weren't around in the scene very long. Well, Ritchie was he was 17 years old, and he hadn't really toured that much at all, and he was having a good time, and he chummed around with Carl. Our drummer was only 17 at that time, and they were kind of buddies, on the tour, and I'd play next to Ritchie, and he was kind of picking my brain for licks and things, and he was just a great little kid. I liked him. He had a lot of talent, and he could play very good for, to be 17 years old. And the Big Bopper was, he was a DJ that kind of made some novelty records and made it big. He had the Chantilly Lace, which was a novelty, and he was kind of a funny guy, upbeat, always talking, and we'd slip out at night, he and I, and Waylon, we were old enough to get a beer, We'd go have a beer and sit and talk about what he's going to do, his plans. And he had a tour coming up in Las Vegas, and I helped him get some guys out of Hobbs, New Mexico, who's going to be his backup band. So, we got pretty close, and just a big shock, you lost a friend, when they went. What do you remember most about that night of February 2nd? Well, we were late getting there to the ballroom, and when we got there was kids lined up for a block waiting to get in the front door, and of course we hit that ballroom and went right in, set up our equipment, and
Before you know it, we was right into the show almost. We didn't have much time to think about the show, and then we switched around. Each guy played drums, and one of the Belmonts played drums a little bit, and we had an opening act. Frankie Sardo came on first, and then Dion the Belmonts, then the Big Bopper, then Ritchie, then Buddy. And Ritchie and Buddy actually played drums for each other, and Carlos played drums for the Big Bopper and Dion and the Belmont. And I'm trying to think if the Belmont played drums when they were on. I'm pretty sure Ritchie came out and played with them. I know we saw each other a lot more that night than any of the other Jaws, because he was up and down, elfing on the stage a lot.
Playing drums is very physical.
Yeah.
So if he was playing sets for the other guys and then playing his own, he had a heck of a night.
He did, and he was a very good little drummer too.
Mm-hmm.
Buddy said, "Can you play Peggy Sue?" And he said, "Yeah, man." And just bam, right into it.
You were originally thought to be on the plane because Buddy actually had your wallet.
He had my wallet, and when I went back out to the station wagon, I told him I wasn't going. I asked him if he'd go to the post office and pick a letter up for me that my mother had sent to Fargo. And he said, "Yeah, give me some ID." So I pulled out my wallet and was fishing around for my driver's license. He said, let me have your wallet, because they just wanted to get started to the plane. He just took it and put it in his inside coat pocket, Yeah, they found it the next morning, and they had me listed. They knew there was only four bodies, but they had 5 different IDs,
Your family thought that you were part of the accident, and you actually called home, and they were very surprised to hear from you.
I called home, and I was talking to my mother, and as soon as we got there to Fargo and got in the hotel, Waylon called his mother and dad, and I called mine, and I asked my mom had she had the television turned on. She said no, she hadn't felt like watching TV that morning, so she didn't have it turned on. The very same time I was talking to her, the neighbor lady had heard my name mentioned over a Tulsa radio station.
Mm-hmm.
It's been on the plane, and she was trying to get through to my mom, and we talked for 15 or 20 minutes, probably. And so when I got off the phone, this lady called my mother and said, "I heard your son's name mentioned as being in the plane crash." Mom told her, said, "No, I just talked to him on the phone, said he's all right," and told her who was actually on the plane.
Where were you when you heard the news of the crash?
We didn't find out till 11 o'clock. We got to Fargo, the hotel, and the road manager and I walked into the lobby to set up our rooms and walked over to the counter, and I told the guy, I said, "Put me up in a room next to Buddy Holly," and the desk clerk said, "Man, haven't you heard that those guys got killed in a plane crash this morning?" And there was a picture of the Big Bopper on TV there in the lobby of that hotel. But I saw that as I was walking in, and I just figured that it was advertisement for the show that night.
Right.
That's how we found out, and I went back to the bus and woke Waylon up and told him what happened, And so.
What's your most cherished memory of playing with Buddy and the guys?
Oh, just that we really had a good time, and the kids really got into Holly, and he was definitely a star, He felt like walking around with a star. I've recorded with just about every major country and western, a lot of the rock acts, and then over the last 30, 40 years, but to me, he's always my biggest star. Him and Bob Wills, to me, were always the biggest guys, as far as I was concerned,
Now, after the crash, the tour continued on, which had to be extremely difficult.
It was. We did that. We went ahead and did the show that night, and we talked to Mr. Holly, and he said, you guys need to go ahead and finish that out. And of course, the agency in New York had called and said, "If you and Waylon don't do the show tonight," I said, "the tour's going to bust up." He said, if y'all will go ahead and do the show tonight," he said, "tomorrow night I can have you a replacement with Frankie Avalon and Jimmy Clanton." And so he was already thinking ahead, and I had already made plans, So we did the show that night. I don't remember a whole lot about what happened that night. It's kind of like a blue haze,
Right. Yeah.
I met Bobby V that night, and he had his little band there, and they were still in high school. I met Bobby, and later ended up playing on all of his records on Liberty.
He actually had a slight Buddy Holly sound to him, and he did a lot of work with the Crickets and whatnot too.
Yeah. He did have.
Now, eventually, you became the A&R man with Liberty Records for the country and western division, and you began producing a lot of great acts, and you mentioned a lot of the great acts.
Yeah, and then I went, like when I got to Nashville, I ran a company called Metro Media Records, and then I finally just got into doing session work and producing. They're running the label is very time consuming, and you still had to do the session work, and but I enjoyed my years in Nashville playing, and I'm on lots of records, and I recorded with over 300 people throughout the years.
And I read that you've done session work for just about 7,000 recording sessions.
Yeah, I'm getting paid on 6,800 sessions.
Wow. That's busy.
Musicians Union, yeah.
Yeah, because I know I talked to Glenn Campbell a few weeks ago, and he's done a lot of stuff, too.
I helped Glenn get started out there, man. He was just getting into L.A. When I was there at Liberty, and I was doing all the Jan and Dean stuff and all the rock stuff. Snuff Garrett was producing. I was doing all of that. And there's some other people, Lou Adler, and I had kind of got the first chair rock and roll guitar player out there, and then Glenn came in, and we got to be buddies. And we ran around together, and I sent him out on a lot of sections. I'd get called and couldn't make it. And I said, man, you need to get a hold of Glenn Campbell, so he's a great guitar player. And so we kind of, for 2 or 3 years out there, we were pretty close. We worked a lot together, and fished still. I went fishing a lot, and he came on to be a big star himself,
Right.
Which is great. He still got it. He still plays good.
Oh, I've seen him several times. Great guitars, yeah. You continue to do the shows, as you talked about earlier, in memory of Buddy Ritchie and the Big Bopper. You kind of go back and do the whole memory thing show.
This time every year.
What's it like to go back and remember with the fans?
Man, it's really great. They really hang in there, the Buddy Holly fans. And, of course, there'll be a lot of English people over from England, a lot of Brits over to Clear Lake. But I was over in England last June, and you won't believe how popular Holly still is over there. People walking up wanting you to sign autographs, and got old CDs that they've seen your name on the back of, things to sign. Say, man, we've been waiting 47 years to meet you and get your autograph. And he's as big over there right now as he ever was.
Wow. What's it like going back to the Surf Ballroom?
Well, it brings back a lot of memories, and of course, I get to talk to a lot of people up there that was there that night, And, everywhere I play up there, there'll be some people, and I always ask them if there's anybody that was there. And, of course, the Riverside's going to be a big thing this year. I haven't been back there, and this will be the first time I've been to the Riverside Ballroom in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I'm looking forward to that.
Now, you also played with Paul McCartney on one of his memorial bashes. And
I've worked a couple times with Paul, and I hope to see him in March when I'm over in Liverpool.
He actually called you the greatest guitarist ever.
Well, I got him fooled, I guess. He's told me he was my biggest fan, and it always made me feel good,
How'd you get involved playing with him?
He hired the Texas Playboys to come to Chicago in the early 90s to play for his End of the World tour. He had a big party for 1,000 people up there at Soldier Field, and had this gigantic tent with set up, and he had a chef from every country in the world that he had played, and he brought in the top chef from that country, and it was for radio people and people that had been with him on the tour, and it was quite a deal. Then right after that, he brought the Buddy Holly Story play over, the Broadway play. I went up to New York and played a couple of nights with him up there promoting the show, the play. I haven't seen him in a few years, but I'm looking forward to catching him in Liverpool.
So aside from touring and whatnot, what are you into these days?
Well, we still have the Texas Playboy Band. We do that, and I'm working on a CD right now with a boy named Tommy Irwin from Dallas. I just finished a CD with a cowboy here in Fort Worth. His name's Dan Roberts. His CD's out, and just trying to stay busy, keep my wife happy.
You have a lot of recordings out, actually.
Yeah, I do. I've got a lot of different CDs. And we've got a new Texas Playboy CD out. It's got 21 singers on it. People that came in, and put their voices on the Texas Playboy Band's tracks. And it's really good. It's really, really nice.
And if people want information about that and your work, they can go to westmainproductions.com.
They can do that, or they can go to bobwillscd.com.
All right, sir. I thank you so much. Nicest guy I've ever talked to.
Well, thank you, Bob. It's been my pleasure, and I hope your fans up there come to see me if I'm out that way,
Yeah.
We'll be in New York. We're up there every June for the Lincoln Center with the Texas Playboys, and we got new fans we meet every day, that still love Western swing music. I'm glad you called, and keep in touch with me.